And this one is an expansion to their previously released game called The Kraken Wakes. And if you're not familiar with this game, this is a cooperative game where players essentially play over 2 acts. During the first act, players are going to be exploring the sea and the islands to try and gather gear and level up their crew and ships. And the whole reason for this is because during the second act, players are going to be going up against a final boss. Of course, the better that you've prepared yourself during the first act, the more likely you'll be able to fight against this Kraken. And this new expansion does play very similar to this, where it plays over 2 acts, but of course this one is introducing a brand new threat. The way the acts play also vary a little bit, with this one having a little bit more of a push your luck mechanism to it, because in this one players are going to be trying to spend that first act gathering up all the cursed gold and putting it back into the chest, which will then break the curse of the ghost ship and allow players to fight against that boss. The catch here is that the longer you take to do this, the stronger those ghost ships and the Banshee leading them are going to be. So you do want to try and find that gear that you need as quickly as possible, so you're not making the first act too long, which would then make your final boss very powerful. Of course, this is going to be bringing all sorts of new enemies, equipment, crew members, and new ways to engage in battle. And if you are interested in this one, I do have it linked in the description below, but if you want even more information, I'll roll my previous footage for the previous game. And this is a cooperative game where players are each going to be choosing their own ship and crew at the start of the game, each with its own strengths and weaknesses, and then the game's actually played over 2 different acts. And during the first act, the player's goal is to try and upgrade their ship and crew as much as possible to get themselves in the best position for the second act. And in order to do that, players are going to be moving around the board, exploring different ports and markets, but then also battling raiding and naval ships and exploring different shipwrecks to gain gold, and then spending that gold to upgrade their ship and crew. But every action a player does have a chance of gaining more attention from the Kraken, and too much attention will wake the Kraken, triggering the second act, and this is where players will be fighting against the Kraken as well as its 8 tentacles, trying to work together to fight back in a sea of ever-changing whirlpools. And this game doesn't necessarily have elimination, because if there is a fallen ship, one of the other ships can go to try and rescue their crew, and the player of that crew will be able to perform some additional actions on their turn, gaining access to certain parts of that other player's ship. And if the players are able to defeat the Kraken and avoid their watery death, then they win the game.